The most beautiful emotion we can experience is the mystical. It is the power of all true art and science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. Albert Einstein. Mysticism and reported mystical experiences, like claims of becoming one with a god or absolute reality, are often dismissed today as interesting but ultimately unimportant events fully explained by neurological processes in the brain. However, mystical events, whether real or fictional, have significantly shaped the course of human history. All of the world's major religions have started from reported mystical experiences, such as the angel Gaberial manifesting in front of the Virgin Mary, or the Buddha experiencing initial nirvana under the Bodhi tree. Mystical experiences have been reported to radically alter the trajectory of experiencers' lives in many cultures and societies, including the non-religious. Plus, if just naturalistic neural events in the brain fully explain all mystical experiences, this raises a philosophical question. Does identifying neural correlates of mystical experiences prove they are mere naturalistic brain events, or does it just identify the brain activity that occurred during a genuine mystical experience? Regardless of epistemology, should we put more effort into understanding and experiencing these events to improve our well-being if they indeed, as reported, radically change the way we view our life? This video will serve as a brief introduction to the philosophy and psychology of mysticism, and it will cover what mystical experiences are, explore their categories and attributes, examine how beneficial they are, and if they can serve as a doorway to something about reality beyond our comprehension, which we should seriously explore. So first, what exactly is mysticism and what is a mystical experience? Mysticism is a group of practices, discourses, texts, institutions, traditions, and experiences that may refer to any kind of transformative or altered state of consciousness. According to philosopher Jerome Gelman, a mystical experience can be thought of in a wide sense and a narrow sense. The wide sense definition is a purportedly supersense perceptual or subsense perceptual experience, granting acquaintance of realities or states of affairs that are of a kind not accessible by way of sense perception, somatosensory modalities, denoting a sensation such as pressure, pain, or warmth, which can occur anywhere in the body, or standard introspection. Now, what does that mean? By the term supersense perceptual, we're talking about a sense experience not appropriate to the regular way we normally sense things. We're talking about something otherworldly, beyond our physical understanding of reality, such as Mary witnessing an angel. Our supersense perception can be accompanied by regular sense perception in this case. Subsense perceptual means that we're experiencing an atypical conscious event, but there's no otherworldly experience. In fact, we're not even fully aware of specific thoughts, concepts, or objects anymore. Think of a state of pure consciousness where thoughts and the sense of self drops away, such as those reported by experienced Buddhist meditators. The narrow definition is a purportedly super sense perceptual or sub-sense perceptual unitive experience granting acquaintance of realities or states of affairs that are of a kind not accessible by way of sense perception, somatosensory modalities, or standard introspection. Now, the only difference here is the word unitive, which refers to an often discussed subclass of mystical experience where the sense of a self fades away and the experiencer has a non-dualistic oneness. Examples include the Christian mystical tradition, a friar forming a union with God, or in the Hindu tradition, Atman, or our soul becoming a Brahman, or ultimate reality. In both uses of the term, the mystical experience can be both religious or non-religious. Individuals have reported a variety of mystical experiences in all types of cultures throughout human history. For example, Joan of Arc at a young age began hearing voices of saints and believed God chose her to lead France to victory over England. She was so convinced Charles of Valois allowed her to lead the country's army to victory in Orleans. Mystic and polymath Hildegard of Bingen wrote about 10 mystical visions, including a mystical experience described similar to an ecstatic loss of consciousness in her visionary work, The Book of Divine Works. She believed these visions helped illustrate the relationship between God and his creation, with humankind as the pinnacle. Philosopher Henry David Thoreau seemed to experience a benevolent oneness with nature, and Walden writing, "I was suddenly sensible of such sweet and beneficent society in nature, in the very pattering of drops, in the very sight and sound around my house, an infinite and unaccountable friendliness all at once, like an atmosphere sustaining me. Every little pine needle expanded and swelled with sympathy and befriended me. I was so distinctly made aware of the presence of something kindred to me that I thought no place could ever be strange to me again." Mystical events have been reported in the 20th and 21st centuries too. Albert Einstein, a self-described agnostic and denier of any sort of afterlife, wrote about mystical experiences which one feels oneness with the universe. Still, there are moments when one feels free from one's own identification with human limitations and inadequacies. In such moments, one imagines that one stands on some spot of a small planet, gazing in amazement at the cold yet profound moving beauty of the eternal, the unfathomable. Life and death flow into one, and there is neither evolution nor destiny, only being. Reported events and practices of mysticism have existed for centuries around many cultures and societies. For example, practices like shamanism purposely facilitate mystical events in individuals. Evidence shows shamans or priests who communicate directly with plant spirits in Mexico, Peru, and Brazil, and more work with naturally occurring psychedelic substances like ayahuasca for therapeutic healing reasons. Also, Buddhists for centuries have sought to achieve mystical type experiences through meditation practices with the 4 jhanas. Jhanas have been described in the Pali Canon as trance-like states of deep peace, completely without desire and craving. The 4th jhana state includes a feeling of pure equanimity and mindfulness, the self fading away to pure consciousness. So getting a little bit more specific, what do philosophers specify as the types and attributes of mystical experiences? William James, dubbed the father of American psychology, wrote the first serious work on mystical experiences, titled The Varieties of Religious Experience. It assigned several characteristics to mystical experiences, 2 of the most important being noetic and ineffable. Noetic means the experience involves knowledge of what a subject apprehends, whether it comes at the time of the experience or later. Ineffable means the experience is indescribable to others. Think of you had to be there to see it. Of course, there appears to be a logical contradiction here. As stated by St. Augustine, God should not be said to be ineffable, for when this is said, something is said, and a contradiction in terms is created. Since if that is ineffable, which cannot be spoken, then that is not ineffable, which is called ineffable. Basically, how can we say a mystical experience is ineffable when using the term ineffable to describe that very experience? Plus, how can we be sure we receive knowledge from an experience that's ineffable in itself? Isn't this some sort of paradox? Well, there are some initial responses to this. First, suppose the experience is of the subsense perceptual experience type, where there is no indescribable phenomenological material present. In that case, it may be able to be described by natural means, even though there is this undescribable feeling toward it. Another is to apply first-order attribution and labels to the experience and have ineffability, a second-order term about specific first-order terms. Another, by philosopher William Alston, says that the term ineffable actually refers to the difficulty of literally describing the experience rather than by metaphor, analogy, and symbols. Think of hearing a strange new piece of music. The experience is ineffable, but we can use metaphors and analogies like dark and mysterious to help someone else understand our experience. Ineffable is just a term William James used to help us begin thinking about mystical events. Many of these experiences or parts of them may be described. So scholars have set out to understand these experiences by assigning them certain attributes and categorizing them. Scholars, including James, began attempting to understand mystical events from the perennialist approach. Now, this means to separate the mystical event from its historical and cultural context. Perennialists believe mystical experiences all point to one universal transcendent reality. These experiences should be privatized and separated from the historical and cultural context they emerged. Philosophers have several categories to help classify types of mystical experiences. Perennialist philosopher Walter Terence Stance, in his book Mysticism and Philosophy, distinguished 2 types of mystical experience, extrovertive and introvertive. Extrovertive mysticism is an experience of the unity of the external world where objects and concepts exist. Introvertive mysticism is an experience of unity devoid of perceptual objects. It is literally an experience of nothing being there. There are no objects, concepts, or thoughts during this type of event. We look inward, not outward. However, there is debate if inward mystical experiences really exist, as it seems a full emptying out of consciousness would be pure unconsciousness. Another is dualistic versus monistic. With dualistic, there is still a subject and object, such as God and the mystic. Monist is the self-dissolving, and there is absolute unity of everything. R.C. Zahner identified 3 types of mystical consciousness. Number 1, panahenic, meaning an extrovertive experience of oneness with nature, with oneself included. Number 2, monistic, meaning an experience of an undifferentiated unity transcending space and time. And theistic, meaning an experience where there is a duality between subject and the object of experience, for example, seeing an angel. However, scholars are abandoning the perennialist strategy for a more contextual and constructivist approach. Constructivism has to do with the notion that mystical experiences are greatly, if not fully, constructed by the ideas, symbols, and practices that mystics are familiar with when they occur. What is being experienced is being determined by the expectations and the conceptual background of the mystic. Our very culture constructs our mystical event right from the start. Someone in the Middle Ages in Europe who had a mystical experience would believe the Noetic quality had to do with the Christian God, as that was the most rational explanation at the time. But scholars poke holes in the constructivist approach to understanding and gaining knowledge from mystical experiences. For one, how do we fully trust the historical reports of mystical experiences and traditions for a specific time or culture? The Buddha's transcendental event was passed down orally for centuries before it was ever written down, and Buddhists certainly don't agree on one canon of literature. Plus, there have been reported unorthodox or innovative mystical experiences within the traditional mystic culture, such as those by the heretical Meister Eckhart in the Christian tradition. What about different types of religious experiences reported by someone who doesn't practice religion? Another type of classification system philosophers are using is Inherentism versus Attributionism. Now, Inherentism means the atypical conscious event itself has some baked-in mystical or religious quality or content to it. At the time of the event, we are understanding that we're experiencing a union with, say, God, or a universal consciousness. Attributionism contrasts where only after this ineffable event will we begin to assign meaning to it, such as deeming it religious. In the book, Religious Experience Reconsidered, a leading attributionist scholar, Ann Taves, draws upon modern empirical research of the brain to suggest that the mystic initially experiences what she calls a special event, not inherently religious or divine. Afterward, the noetic content is processed and one may deem it religious. So perennialism, constructivism, attributionism, and others are interesting ways to begin classifying and understanding mystical experiences. But how do we know for sure a mystic truly had, say, a divine experience or made contact with something outside our current understanding of reality? If we experience a mystical event ourselves, how do we fully trust the noetic content and know it's not our minds playing tricks on us? Even if the divine event seems real beyond a doubt, that's not enough to objectively prove that it was indeed caused by divine origin. Is there a solid epistemological framework, epistemology having to do with the nature and origin of knowledge, we can use to derive true knowledge from these events and thus understand their nature? Well, there have been rationalistic arguments, meaning certain truths exist, and that we can use logic to form correct conclusions that attempt to show mystical experiences can come directly from a god, such as the Christian God, or in, say, believers in panpsychism, from a universal conscious substance. The problem with rationality is that the entities from which mystical experiences originate haven't been fully proved to exist, beyond a doubt, using rational or empirical evidence. So that leaves empiricism or sense experience knowledge to attempt to understand mystical events. But the science of the mind is not a true science, which is subject to pure falsification. You can probably never obtain someone else's conscious experience of a mystical event or just regular everyday life. So we can use perhaps secondary types of empirical data to form rational guesses at what mystics or ourselves experienced. One such example may be survey data. Mystical events, after all, are being reported in many cultures across the globe today. Buddhists and adept meditators often report the same sensations and experiences while meditating without knowing each other. Users of entheogens, such as psilocybin mushrooms, report similar mystical feelings and experiences, often correlating with dosage use. Using technology like MRI or CT scans to understand mystical experiences inside the brain, scientists could explain the origins and content of such events as naturalistic brain-based events. Naturalistic meaning the only thing real is nature and the known laws of nature. There's nothing supernatural or otherworldly here. Increasing research, including that from Diaquili and Newberg, shows that decreased activity in the temporal lobe could lead to unification-type mystical events. They claim the temporal lobe is involved in the feeling of I and generates the feeling of self. Decreased or cut-off activity can stimulate mystical feelings, whether from substance use, seizure, or something else. Long-standing research shows that epileptic seizures are linked to this temporal lobe, leading to the thought that epileptic episodes could trigger mystical oneness events. Davinsky, in his work Religious Experiences and Epilepsy, suggests many religious mystical figures may have just had epilepsy. Research from scholar Fabien Picard suggests that dysfunction in the interior insula, part of the brain involved in aspects of certainty, may be involved in the experience being ineffable, yet there being a strong certainty that we experience something otherworldly. But neurological data and theories can do no more than explain what happens in the brain during a mystical experience, not the specific origin of the event. Perhaps the CT scan is simply witnessing how the brain acts when influenced from otherworldly phenomena. The truth is, we can't know for sure, only guess at the cause using what evidence we have. After all, if true propositional knowledge exists, it exists as a degree of probability. So to say naturalistic explanations, meaning explanations that only involve the way scientists think nature and its laws work today, can explain all mystic-type experiences now and to forever, is perhaps as unscientific and unphilosophical as religious zealots claiming all mystical experiences are caused only by their particular god. But if you're experiencing what seems like a mystical hallucination, it's probably of brain-based origin, as that's what the evidence suggests. So it's best to see a doctor or psychiatrist instead of building that doomsday shelter in your backyard. Even if mystical events are found to be entirely caused by just naturalistic factors in the brain, that doesn't mean they're not of significant importance for us today, and we need to study and attempt to seek them out. After being shunned as harmful and illegal substances for decades in the West, psychedelic compounds such as LSD, psilocybin DMT, mescaline, and MDMA are starting to be used to treat mental disorders. Johns Hopkins, University of California, Berkeley, Yale, and other institutions have established psychedelic and consciousness research divisions. They are beginning to publish studies showing how these mystical experience compounds are helping individuals overcome disorders such as OCD, major depressive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and more. The induced mystical experience is the key part of the individual overcoming their affliction, as noted in studies like those at Johns Hopkins. Though the specifics to how these experiences are specifically helping people are unknown, it does appear to increase neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize thought patterns, and also may increase empathy. These experiences are thought to help perhaps individuals get outside the stories of anxiety, depression, and trauma and find new ways to process these events and overcome them. Although psychedelics are still highly illegal drugs as of the recording of this video, available only for qualified therapy candidates, some have suggested that everyone should participate in psychedelic therapies and other uses to improve subjective well-being. After all, humanity has had a tradition going back centuries of bringing about mystical experiences for a better life. If mystical experiences really do bring about such radical life-changing ways of looking at life, shouldn't we do a better job understanding them and learning how to apply them safely to all our lives? It seems strange that mystical events have had such an importance in almost every culture and society dating back thousands of years, yet so little is known about them. So there's far more to the philosophy and psychology of mysticism and mystical experiences. Let me know what you think of this topic. Have you or anyone you know had what could be considered a mystical experience? What was it? Do you agree that more effort should be taken to understand these events and allow more people access to have safe experiences with them? If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like it using the link in the description, and turn on the notification bell to receive updates when new videos come out. Let me know what topics you want videos made out of, and again, let me know your thoughts about mysticism. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again.